Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Thank you guys for tuning in. You are on another episode of Black and Blue, and I got a special guest. He's behind the scenes. I'll introduce him in a minute. You see the name. Some of you may know him, some of you may not, but we're going to learn a lot about him today. But some of you already know this is a continuation of the lab. Okay, the lab has been basically knocked out of the water. It was very successful, but we're focusing in on African American or minorities that are in law enforcement, hence the name Black and Blue. Okay, and we're going to go live roughly once a week with learning the perspective of individuals, either from a rookie perspective, seasoned officer perspective, or a retired officer's perspective. And today we got a special guest, and he's going to give us a perspective that we may or may not know about. So tune in. We're going to have a lot of fun. Welcome back again. We're streaming on multiple platforms, so make sure you guys tag, like, and share. We are on Facebook, Coach Clee page. We are on Facebook, Black and Blue page. We are on LinkedIn, Clee Tillman page. We are on YouTube, Coach Clee page, and YouTube, Black and Blue page. I know that's a bunch that could be very confusing, but if you're looking in on whatever platform you're looking in on, make sure you tag, like, and share, and comment when appropriate. The website scrolling below, not now, but make sure you guys tune in. There's a couple books, there's a couple interviews on the website that I think you guys may enjoy, that you can learn some stuff from. This is brought to us all by One Way Publishing. This is a publishing company that produces many of the books that you see behind me, and other books that are on the way. They're coming down the pipeline. So tune into that. Like I said, we're publishing. We're streaming on multiple different platforms. One Way Publishing is the book publishing company that can take you from a mere thought to a book that's bought. So make sure you guys check us out. The website scrolling below. But right now, without further ado, I got a special guest in the background. His name is Chief Michael Lee. He's the chief of police for Shippensburg University, for those of you that are aware, here in Pennsylvania. He has more than 20 years, maybe close to 25 years of law enforcement experience. He has a wide range of various facets in law enforcement with that experience. He's grown through the ranks. He's currently the chief of police at Shippensburg University, and I'm going to bring him to the table here, but we got to go ahead and play this interview for this video first. Stand by.
He is a son, a father, a brother, a law officer, an accomplished officer.
over and out.
And there it is. I hope you guys like the intro video. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I'm going to introduce Michael Lee. Like I said, he's the chief of Shippensburg University, and I'm bringing him to the stage right now. Let me unmute his mic. Let me bring him out. Here we are. Mike, Chief, how are you?
I'm doing great.
Good. Thank you for making yourself available to be with us tonight. I hope you're as excited as I am. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Well, I started out initially. I didn't know what I wanted to do regards to law enforcement. So initially, I wanted to be a nurse growing up.
Okay.
But when I started looking at what the requirements were, I was like, this is maybe too much work that I can handle. So it just so happened two houses down from where I was staying, there was a police substation. So I started to look into that. And from there, I ended up getting a internship with the Frederick Police Department. Shortly thereafter, I ended up getting a scholarship from the Rotary Club of Carroll Creek in Frederick.
Okay.
Essentially, they paid my way through community college.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, I was hired by the Frederick Police Department. I worked there for 23 years. And various assignments. I was a school resource officer.
Okay.
I was on the directed patrol unit, patrol. I ended up going to the drug enforcement unit.
Mm-hmm.
Did that for about 6 years. Did some undercover work.
Mm-hmm.
Then started getting promoted and went back to patrol as a sergeant. Then promoted to lieutenant, and that's when I retired in 2018.
Okay. And after you retired, what brought you here to Shippensburg University?
Well, I was working at Howard Community College in Columbia,
Mhm.
Maryland. I worked there, and then the opportunity just presented itself. I
Mm-hmm.
looked into Shippensburg. My daughter was getting ready to go to college,
Okay.
and I wanted her to be close to me. So looked into Shippensburg, ended up getting hired, and she came
Mhm.
with me.
And what better way to protect your daughter by actually being the chief of police right there?
Oh, absolutely.
I got you. I got you. So you mentioned that you wanted to actually, as you were growing up, you wanted to be a nurse, and if it wasn't for the substation that was a couple houses down from where you were at, it had a direct and great influence on you. Fair assessment.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that literally kind of cemented in me going into law enforcement because I could just go over there. I joined the Police Explorer post actually because they worked out of that, and then that's kind of what built the foundation for me to go into law enforcement.
Okay. All right. And as I'm assuming just by the excitement and you still in the actual career field that you don't regret the decision that you made.
Oh, absolutely not. I love that decision that I made.
Gotcha. So I know you mentioned your daughter and going to school, but you've been a school resource officer as well. How have your kids or kids period? How do they think of you and working in this profession?
My kids, they think I'm a pain in the butt. You know, I'm pretty strict.
Mm-hmm.
So, but they know that I actually do listen, and I'm not as strict as they think I am. But I have to kind of give that perception that no nonsense.
Right.
So it's kept them on the straight and narrow so far for the most part.
That's
But
good.
they do they enjoy me when I used to be a police officer because they were much younger
Mm-hmm.
when I had started this career. So they got to see me at the different levels. And then now, obviously, my daughter, she just graduated last week. So she sees me at a whole different level completely.
Mm-hmm.
She's seen everything, but she got to see it up close a lot more with me being the chief. So she can come down to the station and pretty much see me between classes and stuff. So that's good.
Yeah, that's a lot of fun. That's a good bonding experience as well for her actually going leaving childhood behind, going through the college experience and becoming a full-fledged adult and still having to be able to visit one of your parents in the process.
Right.
Yeah. So how do you think kids that you may have dealt with in the past or that you currently deal with, how do you think they view you? Current.
Actually, I still get, because I go back to Frederick pretty often, so
Mhm.
I do still get to interact with some of the kids I taught. Like I used to teach the GREAT program.
Okay.
I was a PAL coach, so we had a
Hmm.
PAL program. So yeah, I still see them, friends with some of them on Facebook and everything. So I get to keep in the contact to see where they're going and what they're doing these days.
That's good. That's good to hear as well, because there's a stigma that comes with law enforcement officers that, and there's a stigma with the younger generation as well that there's a lot of disrespect on both ends, and the two sides don't normally, and at least in the media's view, don't get along. And by what you're saying, that obviously isn't true, because I mean that you're still involved in some of the lives, and you still interact with individuals that you met previously.
Yeah, people would be completely surprised. There are some young men that I arrested plenty of times
Hmm.
uh, throughout my career. But what happened was those arrests essentially kind of shaped their future because they turned their lives around, and
Hmm.
now they're actually mentoring young students who are their age getting into trouble. So now they're trying to steer them away and help build their path going forward. And to see them work as hard as they're doing right now, that to me is a great joy. And then I the one young man, me and his mom, she sends me messages every once in a while saying thank you, because I always ask about him when I don't say anything. But he's doing great. They're
Hmm.
both doing great and doing great things for the city of Frederick. So I can say that.
That's good, and that's good to hear as well. Trust me, I know it's kind of like it can be kind of frustrating when you deal with an individual, especially over and over again, and you feel like you have no impact. And then years later or so, that individual comes back and says, "You know what? Thank you for being a thorn in my side when I needed it," or "Thank you, you helped develop me into the person I am." And to see how they've grown, and now they're giving back to the community or giving sharing their experience is like a tremendous feeling in itself.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, what leading up to actually being a patrol officer and working on individual task force per se, going through the ranks of directed patrols, SRO, the PAL program, and various other facets. What kind? Who guided you throughout this process? Did you have a individual parent, a mentor, or was it a group of people sporadically through life that helped mold you into the man you are today?
I would say it was a really a great combination of people.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously my dad, he would I would still talk to him. My mom, she always supported me
Mm-hmm.
through everything. But there's a few people like in my academy class.
Okay.
Uh, they ended up like Dwight Summers was probably the biggest influence on my career,
Okay.
along with Patrick Grossman as well. They both kind of helped me. I worked with them. Patrick became the captain and was the acting chief for a while in Frederick. So obviously those experiences, the chief of Westminster,
Hmm.
Westminster, Maryland Police Department, Tom Ledwell, he was a big influence as well. Just learning from the different people,
Hmm.
the different aspects of the job, and how to deal with people, both inside and outside of law enforcement.
Yeah,
It's definitely invaluable experience, and to be able to work with a group of people that I consider great friends it's hard to describe.
believe me, I understand. I understand. And the list of names that you gave and those people who helped influence you were some key people throughout your entire life and throughout your career. Um, how do you think that's helped you affect some of the challenges that you face now as chief of police?
Well, one of the things is I still have that pipeline, so
Hmm.
I reach out to them regarding some decisions because
Hmm.
I know they kind of been there, done that.
Hmm.
So for me, when I'm unsure about something, don't let I'm not going to be one to fool you. Just because you get to chief doesn't mean you have all the answers to all the questions. Okay,
Uh-huh.
you need to rely on others who've been there, done that as well to kind of help guide you through the best decision making possible. And I can say with them that I do have that. Do have that ability to do that.
That's good. It's good to have a network to fall back on too.
It
And
definitely.
that be humble and honest enough to say that, I may not have the answer right now, but I'll give you the best decision, or I'll get back to you with the educated answer momentarily.
Yes.
What kind of challenges do you face as being a chief, if you can share any of those with us?
Well, you face, especially when you come from not only a different state, but then you come from municipal policing into campus policing. It's
Hmm.
a whole different dynamic completely.
Oh yeah,
So
how's that?
yeah, so I kind of looked at it in some respects where I had 3 kids. Now I got about close to about 6,000 kids that I'm
Uh-huh.
responsible for. So you always have to keep that in the back of your mind. So you have to um, look at what's best for them, and you
Hmm.
can't please everybody. You
Hmm.
just got to make the best possible decision, and then you just got to go with it. And in addition to that, you have your financial responsibilities that you need this, but you don't have the money for it. So you're trying to figure out how to make do. That's been tough. That is very, very tough. Any chief is going to tell you, for the most part, they don't get all the money that they want to do everything they want to do. You can have. When I came into this, I had 10,000 ideas. I can only pay for one of them. So,
Right.
I can't get 100 taken care of right off the bat and take it from there. You literally start at one and kind of work your way to progress through.
Gotcha. Gotcha. What are some of the biggest differences that you've seen coming from another state, working municipal, and then actually retiring out and working on a university?
Well, you have to learn the laws in the state that you came from,
Right.
because Pennsylvania and Maryland, even though they're close, they're
Hmm.
completely different in a lot of ways. So you got to learn that. I had to, put together a operations manual. I had to do that from scratch. That took a long time to do to get, you know. So it's just coming from a different state. You got to learn these laws, and then after learning the laws, then you have to um, basically be competent with the people that have been here doing this job for 10, 20, 30 years already.
Hmm.
So they got to have confidence you know what you're doing. So it's just, kind of building that trust between everybody.
Gotcha. Would a fair assessment be that you coming into it, you have to have the confidence also to actually lead a department on individuals that may or may not have actually, I don't know how many officers are with the university, but some may have come from other states, or some may have actually spent their entire career with this agency, but having the confidence to lead with a steady head, I think that would be a fair and competent statement.
Absolutely. I mean, you have to be confident in your abilities.
Hmm.
Um, they didn't pick you because, if you didn't have the background and the qualifications in order to do the job. So when you take that, um, you have to kind of stand up and show that you can do this, you can lead. The biggest thing is to asking the right questions, sitting down
Hmm.
and seeing what the problems are, and then trying to tackle those previous issues one by one, and
Hmm.
then just kind of go from there and kind of set the standard to move forward.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And I know you mentioned how you got your start in law enforcement. When you were on patrol, what's before you became chief? What would you say is one of your favorite time frames that you spent during this career?
Um, it was. It was actually when I was in the drug enforcement unit and I was undercover doing undercover work. I was the
Mhm.
assistant supervisor doing that. That
Okay.
was the most fun because I actually learned the most
Mhm.
doing that. But believe it or not, it's actually I didn't even want to ever be undercover.
Oh,
I had
really?
I had I know most people, that watch TV and think it's all glamorous. I
Mhm.
didn't want it. The only thing I ever wanted to do was be a detective.
Hmm.
Um, and it's just I just kept I between getting promoted, I just didn't get that opportunity.
Mhm.
So for me, that's the only part of my career that was kind of unfulfilled.
I gotcha. Gotcha. And do you think, in retrospect, that if you could do it all again, would you go down the the detective avenue, or are you okay with actually having been undercover and had that fulfilled in that capacity?
I would absolutely go down the detective avenue.
I gotcha.
I would absolutely do that.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Understandable. Can you explain to us any of the frustrations that you feel with law enforcement, or the stigma with law enforcement in today's climate?
I get it comes from both sides.
Mm-hmm.
Um, from the inside, it's a hesitancy to change.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, as things have shown, and I'm not just talking about in the last 2 years or so. The issues that we were having in law enforcement, they date back in the '60s
Mm-hmm.
uh, and before that. So these issues aren't new. It's just the acknowledgement to some degree that they actually are happening now.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's long overdue. But some
Right.
people still have the mindset of, the police tells you to do something, just do it, this, that, and the other. Well, as we have learned, police aren't always right.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you just actually have to, you can question, and I do teach my children, you can question some, but there's a right way to do that.
Right. Right. Uh-huh.
You can comply now and we can work it out later. you
Right.
know so but not everybody gets to hear that voice,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where some of the issues comes in.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then from the outside, when things happen, for example, literally I had a conversation today with my sister, um,
Mm-hmm.
and her thing was, well, why are all these white shooters being taken into custody and not shot? I'm
Yeah.
like, that's not an easy question, because if they don't present the threat at that time, or the
Mm-hmm.
perceived threat,
Mm-hmm.
then those what can happen, it's just not happening. I mean, and none of us are there to see how he surrendered or what was going on at that time. But you can't also have the police just running up on people and lighting them up because they did something as well. So, there's no simple, easy answers.
Right.
But I can say, just based on the training and experience, that if a threat is presented, the police will fire.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they're right, but not all the time.
Right.
So I just say things just did not align uh, the other day when that person surrendered, um,
Mm-hmm.
in order to have a different outcome.
Right, right. I understand where you're going. Why do you think the mindset is like that? As far as well, I understand. Something horrendous did happen, and you kind of want that horrendous activity to, for one, be stopped immediately, and you want it to be resolved immediately as well. And which I do truly get. And the reputation is that Caucasian shooters normally have the right to due process, but if you're African American and you're not even presenting involved in a crime, you're judge, jury, and execution, and you're taken out, no questions asked. Would you care to comment on anything like that?
Well, I mean, have there been instances where that has occurred? There's no denying that that has happened in law
Mhm.
enforcement. But you know, I can't sit here and make some overarching statement,
Mhm.
regarding every different agency that has, been involved in something to that degree, because I wasn't there to be able to judge that.
Right.
I'm sure there's cameras that were probably there that probably captured the surrender, and
Mhm.
you know, if and as we've seen, officers are charged criminally now.
Mhm.
Um, Something that wasn't happening 5, 10 years ago, as much as it is now.
Mhm.
So if an officer acts inappropriately, there's a lot of eyes that are going to see what happened, and so you know, it's just not a simple this should have happened or that should have happened. It's just very difficult to make those judgments. And that's
Mhm.
why investigations take longer than what people think they should, because you have to look at literally every piece of evidence to come to that appropriate conclusion.
Exactly. Yeah. Well explained. Well explained. I totally get, and I know that's gonna be debated back and forth for a little while now because it's still fresh and brand new. But I totally understand because the cameras are everywhere. Not only cameras, cell phones, security cameras, they're everywhere. And even if misconduct was happening, it's captured now, which is a good thing.
Right,
However, when someone is brought to justice, then that shows the capturing of that person being brought to justice, and then the system has to work 100% effectively, which
right,
uh, that I think that's what aggravates a lot of people in the process, and the waiting time as far
yeah,
as because you want to we're instant gratification, so if something happens you want instant resolution for that, and that's just not the case.
right, absolutely.
Yeah. And so you talked about some of your frustrations through the career, but what are some of the things that you're most proud of?
Uh, Phew. Um, I'm most proud of my interactions with people throughout my career. Um,
Hmm.
like when I lived in Frederick, I used to make a lot of arrests.
Okay.
So, when me and the kids we go out to eat and we see somebody comes up to me and we shake hands or whatever, we talk, and my son would always ask me, he's like, who is that? I was
Hmm.
like, somebody I arrested before. And he was like, why do they come up and talk to you even though you arrested them? I was like, because I treated them like I would treat anybody else.
Hmm.
And that's the biggest thing that, I tell the young people is you treat people how you want to be treated.
Hmm.
And even though you arrest them, there usually is not a lot of hard feelings because you had to do what you had to do.
Right.
And
Hmm.
so, and that was a community I actually grew up in. So I ended up arresting people that I knew. But
Hmm.
at the end of the day, I did what had to be done, and there really wasn't any hard feelings related to it.
Gotcha. And the people that you actually arrested that you knew, did you, like you mentioned before, do you think it had a better effect on them in the long run, or do you think they may have stayed stagnant from that moment?
Some might have stayed stagnant, but it was more like one of the things where I knew their mom went to
Mhm.
play ball with their brother or uncle, and stuff like that. So I mean, it wasn't like it was definitely no secret. So I had to pick and choose the undercover work that I did because I was very well known in the
Uh-huh.
city. So it was just one of those things where it worked out, and a lot of the times it was actually kind of a more of a relief when I showed up because they knew they would
Hmm.
be treated good at the end of the day.
Gotcha. That's a good feeling on both sides. For one, I know it's a good feeling for you to know that that I have to do this job. I appreciate the fact that you understand that I have to do this job. So let's go ahead and get it done. And I know if they know that the gig's up and it's time to go, and they see you coming through, like, okay, at least it's not somebody who doesn't know me. At least I
Right,
know that I'll be handled and treated as a human being, as opposed
right,
to what a lot of lot of individuals may perceive as being treated as an animal.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we talked about some of your mentors and some of the people who influenced you, and the list this may kind of coincide with that previous question as well. Are there any specific heroes that you look up to as well that kind of influence you in this law enforcement arena, even if it is TV or movies or anything like that?
I racked my brain. Um, my grandfather, it comes to mind usually.
Mm-hmm.
He was a sheriff. He was the sheriff in Phillips County, Arkansas.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So, and I just think of him uh, going through his struggles that I couldn't even imagine
Mm-hmm.
in Arkansas in the 60s and 70s, and for him to be sheriff, and that to me is one of the biggest things that I point to regarding me actually going into law enforcement, was knowing all the things that he had to go through, and that goes for many other officers of color who had to go through the same thing
Mm-hmm.
growing up in those times, especially in the South,
Mm-hmm.
where things were a lot worse. That to me is the person that I would say probably I look up to the most.
Okay. All right. And was he? You said he was a great influence. Did he share with you any stories or any of his experience while he was sheriff in Arkansas?
No, unfortunately, I was young when he died,
Mm-hmm.
so we didn't get the chance to sit down and actually have that conversation.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So let me ask you this question. This one's one of my favorites, actually. If there was a billboard posted so the whole world could see, what would you like that billboard to say?
Oh man, that's tough. That's tough.
So, yeah, that's a loaded question. That's why I like being on this end of the question.
It is. It is. Now, I was actually on a billboard once.
Okay.
It was a click it or ticket billboard, but I was on it, and that's where people knew me from, was that doggone billboard that was up for many years. Um, the thing I would hope the billboard would say would be, "I treat people the way I would like to be treated."
Hmm.
Just plain and simple.
Mm-hmm. And of course, mentioned that before. That not only does that work in law enforcement, but that works in life.
Yes, absolutely,
And
absolutely.
that thing called karma come back and bite you. You know, if you're
Hmm.
treating people good things happen. If you're treating people poorly, then then not so good things will happen. Come in retrospect.
Yes.
Good, nice billboard. I did a town hall a few months back. Actually, I believe it was back in October in a local school, and it was a bunch of high school kids. And they stayed after school, and it was a real good interaction. And they asked wonderful questions, and I got to answer those questions, and it was a lot of fun to do. One of the questions that struck me, because I know I'm pretty sure that you've seen it, and you may see it with your agency as well, is that there used to be a huge push and a huge amount of applicants going after law enforcement jobs, and that has dwindled over the past year, not only with law enforcement, but with a lot of other occupations as well. But through the law enforcement arena, with having the reputation that it's in right now, a lot of the kids in there were asking about employment and employment questions about whether they should go to college, whether they should join the military, are the requirements on becoming a law enforcement officer in this state or many other states, and what things they should do, what things they should avoid. What is your opinion, and what kind of advice could you give on any high school or college age kid or military person that is thinking about applying in this occupation?
Well, I actually had the opportunity to, I actually got to teach one semester at Shippensburg, a criminal justice class.
Okay.
And I had a young man in there. He asked me, he's like, with everything going on, should I continue through with this law enforcement career? And I
Mm-hmm.
said, absolutely, you should. And he ended up getting hired, and he actually graduates on June the 3rd. So I'm going to be going to his graduation
Mm-hmm.
to see him kind of as a little thank you to him for continuing to move forward. So I tell people every day, law enforcement can be a very rewarding career.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, there's gonna be a lot of missed dates that you're gonna miss, a lot
Mm-hmm.
of dinners you're not gonna make, a lot of cancel plans. But at
Mm-hmm.
the end of the day, it's still a very good career. Um, the applicants applying for law enforcement, that that's gonna continue to hurt for a while.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what magic thing is gonna make law enforcement become the profession that it used to be again.
Mm-hmm.
But for right now, uh, we're going to take a beating.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, law enforcement put law enforcement in this predicament, unfortunately. So
Mm-hmm.
now we got to actively work to get out of it. So that means we have to look at our policies. We got to
Mm-hmm.
change our policies.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the biggest things we got to change is how we train.
Hmm.
So, you know, when I came here, where policies were loose, um, pursuit policies you know,
Mm-hmm.
weren't basically written down for the most part. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, we can't operate that way. Law enforcement can't operate with fast and loose policies.
Mm-hmm.
And there is no quote unquote national standard. I mean, it's
Right.
up to each individual agency to decide what they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that's the thing, is we got to kind of determine, what path do we want to, proceed forward from here. Um, and it's going to be tough. It's going to
Right.
be tough. I wish I had the magic answer. I don't, but I just have to kind of, continue to learn from we learn from other agencies' mistakes at the end of the day. If
Yeah.
another agency makes a mistake, we're learning from it. We
Mm-hmm.
see an agency that's doing something really good and positive, making a good difference. I'm stealing that. That's just how it's going to be.
Right.
And we're going to continue to work together, network, and try to do our best.
Absolutely, good answer, and I totally agree. Because I know a lot of people. Law enforcement is like the end all be all. It's a first responding occupation. We get called for everything, for a cat in a tree to a fire to someone's worst day. I know I'm quoting, stealing a quote from an individual instructor that I met earlier last week, where we see law enforcement, we see good people at their bad days and bad people at their best days. And usually that those situations, sometimes we try to have very positive outcomes, but they can be very negative to that person, even though it's our life and how we live our life in the occupation. This may be the very first time that individual deals with somebody in law enforcement, period,
Right, exactly.
and they get their perspective on that. And so, one of the things that I can wholeheartedly say that has been I've seen change throughout the course of my career and relatively recently, is that focus on mental health awareness.
Mhm.
And the treatment of that during calls, whereas opposed to law enforcement officer shows up, you find out if a crime occurred, if crime didn't occur, you help that individual out the best you can, and then you either make an arrest or you get going. Now, because we're getting more mental health calls, we're not, we're actually we have co-responders that ride with us that work directly with either crisis or some sort of mental health agency, so they can help get that person to the right agency or in front of the right person, so they can be assisted more appropriately.
Yes, absolutely. I mean,
Yep.
obviously, mental health has been a focus. I mean, we were looking at CIT training,
Mm-hmm.
crisis intervention training, many years ago, and now that's one of the requirements that all of our officers have to go through a crisis intervention training program once they're hired.
Right. Yep. I remember I went through it, and it was pretty fun actually to go through the course itself, and I think it's very beneficial because I mean it's people skills as well, and people skills are always the foundation on how to deal with people. Having a conversation, asking questions that are 3 levels deep, so you can actually get to know where the person's mindset is, what their ticks are, what their motivations are, so you can help them. You're more able to help them and more equipped to help them in whatever situation they're going through.
Right.
Yeah. Absolutely. And through the course of conversation, we had a wonderful discussion. I got to learn a little bit more about you. We all did. I got to learn a bit more about you and the occupation. If there's anything that I forgot to ask or through the course of conversation that I jogged your memory, is there anything that you would like to say? Right now, the floor is yours.
Well, I used to tell my officers basically like police officers are like the heroes that people can actually touch and talk to.
Hmm.
So when you're responding to these calls, and I'm talking more like along the line with the children,
Mm-hmm.
as I'm coming, you're kind of setting the foundation as to how they look at you. Because they look at you the way they look at Superman and
Mm-hmm.
Batman. The only difference is they get to actually see you in person and can talk to you and interact with you. So
Mm-hmm.
I always try to stress for them to make that positive contact, because one of my chiefs said it's like a bank. You like each time you have that positive contact, it's like add money to the bank, add money to the bank. You want that bank overflowing, and that's what we try to work with and build going forward. Is we're trying to always add money to that bank instead of
Mm-hmm.
having those negative contacts that take things away and just ruin everything that we're working towards.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for sharing, Chief. We had a wonderful conversation. Thank you for making. I know you're a busy man. I know you got a lot of things going on. Thank you for making yourself available. I hope you tune in to future podcasts. I hope you enjoyed yourself here. I can't say it, that you look good in your uniform, and I hope good things be coming on the horizon for you.
Thank you. I appreciate it very much, and I'm available anytime you need.
Gotcha. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. And ladies and gentlemen, we just met formally less than probably about a month and a half ago at a banquet. And I saw him. I was like, I had to go introduce myself. I had to meet him. I asked him the second question after I introduced myself. I said, would you be willing to come on a podcast? And emphatically, he said, absolutely. Yeah. I had to give him a couple dates, got it done. And here we sit right now.
And I definitely appreciated that.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. And ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of Black and Blue. We had Chief Michael Lee from Shippensburg University. We had a lot of fun. We learned a lot of things. Make sure you guys tune in. There will be more officers coming down the pipeline, whether they're rookie, whether they're seasoned, whether they're retired, and giving their experiences, asking questions. We got a couple comments here real quick before I don't want to miss them before we go. Absolutely. Thank you, Merrick, for tuning in. Thank you for paying attention. I appreciate it. Yes, make sure you guys tune in for future ones. We have a wonderful show going on. Again, we are on YouTube on 2 platforms. We're on Facebook on 2 platforms, and we're also on LinkedIn. So thank you guys for tuning in. Have a wonderful night. Make sure you guys be safe, and we have more surprises coming down the pipeline. So keep tuning in for that. Have a good night. Peace.